Between games at tonight's doubleheader, a local disc jockey blew up disco records in center field, and the crowd responded by rushing the field. A bonfire had been built in the middle of center field. Police tried to clear the unruly crowd, pushed them out.
Disc jockey Dole has held 2 similar rallies to stage blow-ups of disco records, each one resulting in a similar disturbance by youthful crowds.
Disco got blown up in the end of the 70s, went underground. That era of disco turned into techno, turned into trance, turned into all these things that we love, you know?
The history, you just get so many conflicting stories, but the one that I'm gonna stick to is Frankie and Ron Hardy in Chicago.
I heard it began in Chicago. I would say it isn't necessarily true.
A lot of people say house music started in Chicago. I really don't know. I know this for a fact. Ron Hardy's from LA.
Ronnie was from LA. Frankie was from New York.
You're gonna hear a different story, but Frankie Knuckles knows the story because he's the cat. He's the founder.
A lot of people are under the impression that Ron Hardy was from LA. He's not. He's from downstate Illinois. So for those of you who got it wrong.
Yeah.
Okay. I would say that it started in Chicago. Me being from New York City, me carrying the whole format and idea of what I was playing in New York City to Chicago is one thing, but it was actually given birth in Chicago. I took everything that I knew musically and everything that I knew technically to Chicago with me.
He really, I guess, coined the term because he had a club called The Warehouse in Chicago, and so house music came of that.
The Warehouse, we were a private club to begin with. When they blew up all those records in Comiskey Park and they declared disco dead, I watched all these discos in Chicago just like collapse. They either went under or they turned into country western bars. And the Warehouse still sat there very quietly and continued to do business. It didn't affect us at all.
When disco was destroyed and there was this void, all of a sudden it became very uncool to dance, and there were people that were ready to fill that void. For whatever reason, the people in Chicago were most anxious to do that.
And I remember people kept saying, "You guys are still open?" Like, well, yeah. And there wasn't so much emphasis put on mixing as it is today. The equipment was available to do it, but all the focus was put on songs and playing the right song. You had to play the right song. And it wasn't the kind of situation where you only had a 2-hour set to play or 3-hour sets, but you played from beginning to end. Your job started at 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock, and you weren't finished until 4 in the morning. Ron and I became really close friends when I first moved to Chicago. You know, we're listening to every record, learning the songs backwards and forwards, inside and out, and actually teaching ourselves how to make them match. I don't think we were necessarily looking at it as pioneering, if you will. We were just trying to make that booth as conducive as possible to what it is we needed to do, because we were having so much fun. But Ron had a problem. His drug problem just escalated. His condition got worse, his habit got worse. It was a really, really bad time. It was a very sad time. And the fact that I didn't see anybody trying to help him clean that up is the thing that was most heartbreaking to me. But it was at a point now where, what can you do? He was always high every time I saw him. And it reached a point where it's either he had to really seriously consider rehabilitation or the obvious. And then eventually, he was gone. I was riding on the south side with a friend of mine, and we were sitting at the corner light. In the window was a sign that said, "We play house music." And I remember asking, "Well, what is house music?" "It's that shit that you playing down there at that club." And I was like, "Really? Since when has it been called house music?" He was like, "That's what everybody calls it." He's like, "You didn't know that?" No, I didn't know. The rest of it, as they say, is history.
House was really starting to get momentum, like '89. Then '90, Strictly Rhythm started, Nervous recordings, and these were 2 of the most instrumental house labels ever. So house was really starting to gain this kind of momentum in the straight crowd. genre. Because of course the gay clubs which we frequented, we went. We weren't, but we went because we wanted to hear the music. But a lot of the straight club goers were just discovering it.
I had a girlfriend break up with me. It was the first night I heard house, the first night I saw two boys kissing, and the first night I saw a beautiful woman.
Through the 90s, it was just the continuing explosion of the music. It influenced many, many different artists who kind of reinterpreted the sound and fed it back to us.
In Chicago, you could hear a disco record, you could hear the Pointer Sisters, you know, behind all of that, and it was all house.
House music has the umbrella of including progressive house, techno, breaks, garage, disco, all those things incorporated into this one kind of solid kind of heartbeat, so to speak.
It got to be pretty easy in Chicago to get the tunes, and like I said, it was really accessible. I didn't know how blessed you were to have house all the time until you went somewhere else. It's always such a variety of house that people today might call 10 different subgenres. Chicago house was always like, it would be a vocal track, and then it could be like a Detroit minimal click track, a bootleg remix of some non-house track. You know, it's like always kind of ever cycling, and that's kind of what Chicago house is, I think, today.
And then, of course, Chicago radio was major, too, for a lot of people. Hearing BMX and the radio shows that they would have, like, Mix at 6 and the Hot Lunch Mix, stuff like that.
The Hot Mix 5 and BMX, you know, they had the Mix Show, GCI. And the thing with that element is that it got a lot of radio airplay.
There's a special soul to house music, and it captures that element of jazz and the progression of underground music, the underground culture we've had here.
I mean, I was a kid growing up in Chicago, and I just thought that's the way it was. Like, this phenomenon was happening everywhere. When I got to Utah, I was like, where's the house music, and where do we go to nightclubs? And they're like, what are you talking about? You're weird, dude. You Midwesterners, you Chicago kids are weird.
I've been very lucky that I was there in Chicago at the time where not only did I learn how to speak English and understand culture and how to love this music that I never heard before in my life.
It was such an incredible time for Chicago, and I'm really glad that I got to experience it.
I have written a song specifically for those that like to get down.
People who come to the shows now, they're really into just dancing and having a good time. 10 years ago, it was about drugs and the scene and who do you know and all these kinds of things. The people who are still into it are into it for the music.
Go to a venue that's playing house music on Thursday and maybe R&B and hip hop on Friday and Saturday, but on a Thursday, you're not gonna see people get searched.
House kids do not fight with each other. They really don't. I think for the most part, they're just really excited about music and excited to share it with other people, even people that are strangers.
Not only can you listen to the music, but when you go out to the nightclub, it's like a stress-free environment. So you kind of let go for whatever it is, the hour you're there, the 5 hours you're there.
That's one of the reasons why I love my job, because I'm a very easygoing guy and I can't deal with a lot of drama. I love the fact that most of the time when you go to a house club, it's really cool, chill people listening to the music.
I just really enjoyed, you know, the connection, you know, the audio assault, so to speak.
It's an underground sound, but yet mainstream enough that it's so accessible. It's easy to understand and really get infected with the house vibe and the sound.
It brings out a good vibe, people who aren't afraid to be free and let loose.
People come out to party, release, you know, not think about, you know, the stress of everyday life.
People that really do love it are really passionate about it. It's so global and it's so strong worldwide that I find myself playing in small pockets of the world to these crowds of people who are singing along to some of my songs and really loving the music and really supporting it.
Those people that come up to me and say, I love your music, I say to them, yeah, I do too. You're not a fan of me. We are a fan of the same music.
We have people that have been part of this music for over 20, 25 years.
The transformation to house music was quite an amazing thing because back then, a lot of people used to go to bands, but there was always a stop-start factor though. Like you'd really get into a groove and you start going off to the music and then you're just like, oh man, it's over. When house music came in, it kind of changed all that. Tracks are no longer 3 minutes long. If they were, you had to have 2 copies and extend them.
There's this guy playing on turntables, and I was looking at it like, I'd never seen anyone play records together.
It's non-stop. It just went from one song to the next without a break, same beat. Wow, that's pretty cool.
Beat matching and blending is getting things to come together without everyone stopping and looking at you like you're on crack. The technical term is getting the beats in sync with each other. And you don't realize the record's changed, or you hear it very smoothly coming in. That's called beat matching or blending.
I always kind of felt like if you had some sense of rhythm and you could count to 8, you were all good.
Really mathematically, it's not that hard of a thing, but you have to have an ear for it, and it takes a minute.
If I really wanted to learn how to beat matches, really start with the basics, match a beat with the 2 of the same record, and I kind of went from there.
I went and bought 2 copies of Eric B. and Rakim, paid in full. Finally figured out, like, okay, after you're nodding your head like this for like, about 5 hours, there's a beat here. And it goes 1, 2, 3, 4.
So the basic premise of mixing and DJing is just basically trying to get 2 songs to blend together without the crowd realizing you're even doing it. You got to get this turntable to line up in speed with this turntable. So whatever song is on this has got to be the same speed that's on this. That basically is done by playing the record. If you notice when I push forwards and backwards, you can see this little sound wave going back and forth, and the bigger sound waves are usually louder sounds or thicker sounds or different frequency ranges, so you can see that that's a kick. The next little one, you can tell that it's a hi-hat. So usually when you see a DJ doing this, it's called queuing up a record. He's basically getting the first beat of the record and preparing it to drop into the opposite record on the other turntable. And normally he'd be doing this in his headphone. So that's what he'd be hearing. So when it comes on the 1, and then everything else is basically done on the mixer. You can turn down the EQs to make sure you're avoiding kick drums colliding or any specific sounds like bass or things that you don't think will mix very well.
So that was the easy part, getting 2 of the same record. Now you gotta get 2 different records to match. And I was like, oh boy, okay.
You gotta match up harmonies, melodies, make sure it's in the right key. There's a lot of different aspects to DJing.
I really just taught myself, and it was hard. I was not one of those people who picks it up really easily.
Some of my early beat matching was recording mixtapes, and I used to record what I wanted from the radio, and then when there was a commercial or a song I didn't like, I would just kind of count the beats, pause, wait until the right beat kicked in, unpause and kind of blend it together. And
I pretty much locked myself in a room for about a week, had like a crate of records, and I was like, I'm gonna make a mixtape. And I'm just gonna do this until it's perfect. And then I actually gave that mixtape out to a few people who are here in San Francisco, and every few months someone will come up to me and go like, hey, I still have that tape and I still listen to it.
It was kind of like it clicked. And it was like riding a bike, once you figure it out, you never forget.
You can find those 2 tracks that blend together, it's great. And then other times, it's not always about having a perfect, seamless set at all at the same tempo.
Anybody can beat match. You throw 2 records, okay, you understand, okay, this one needs to be faster to catch up to that one, or it needs to be slower because it's too fast. And, that's easy. Actually being able to program a set and really take people on a journey and really manipulate a crowd the way you want them to, that's key. That's more of something that really has to be learned.
When I'm DJing, I'm thinking already next track after the next track. So get an idea what I can do, what fits together, what might fit together in key or in beat or in style or everything.
I mean, you can play the top records out, but that's not going to shape your personality. You're not going to show what makes you, you.
As far as painting your own picture with some of the same songs everyone else has. Like, That's what it's more about than as opposed to beat matching for me. Maybe I'll come in here on this song where everyone else comes in there.
My vinyl collection, just look at it and I'll be like, okay, I know what that is. I know the side, whatever. You look at a CD, you're like, the name.
The diplomatic answer would be whatever works for you, but for me, it's vinyl.
I'm a CDJ. The reason is I travel all the time. I can't be bogged down with vinyl.
It's so much easier to travel. And I don't have to worry about dumbasses stealing my records at the airport because they're in my bag, in my hand. It sucks to go somewhere and like, your stuff isn't there. Like, well, what the hell am I supposed to do?
Something very enduring about the feel of vinyl. I love that. But I won't lose my records anymore. I'm not. I refuse to. I've got about maybe 30,000 records at home at least. Like my dad gave to me, and I don't want to lose that.
I've known so many DJs that have hurt themselves more from carrying records. Late night, you know, a little buzz and you grab your record crate the wrong way and it's all over.
At 24, I didn't care. I'd be like, cool, 2 bags over my shoulders, let's go to the after hours, or let's go here, let's go. Now I'm, you know, a bit older and like, I just don't want to be carrying 100 records anymore.
Mark Farina was one of the first guys who really embraced it and went all CDs.
People can debate, like, oh, in a club, vinyl sounds better. But I've talked to just different people that own clubs and have tested everything from every different, you know, type of download to vinyl. And I find nowadays, though, club-wise, it's very hard to discern CD to vinyl.
Music is the same, and, you know, at the same time, he's able to play new stuff and old stuff from his collection. And that's what people want to hear.
And you still get vinyl hecklers in places. Play a record. Like, it's funny. Like, you're like, okay, you put one on just to like decoy or something.
I read things and get in these conversations with people about real DJs who read vinyl and all this like archaic, flobberty-flop, gobbledygook talk. And I'm like, yeah, okay. But honestly, if I'm playing, I don't think that the person who's dancing really cares what medium I'm using to bring them this sound. But generally, I've got a bag of CDs and I'm golden.
Yeah, I'm a vinyl head, but honestly, I don't carry vinyl anymore. But a lot of the music I get isn't out yet. Like, as far as the things I want to play in my set, it's not on vinyl. So it just makes sense to have the CDs.
It's very hard to get records right now. I can get those same records in the store offline like in 10 minutes.
When I get promos sent, it's mostly digital or CDRs, so if I want to play them, I have to take CDs.
Years and years ago, I said I would never use CDs. Of course now I play all CDs. I can't believe it. But you know, you never know what's gonna happen in the future.
You know, I resisted for a while, but whatever. We drive cars now, we don't ride on horses.
I mean, there are still a few DJs who are like, I play vinyl. Like Doc Martin still plays vinyl. What, he doesn't? Are you serious? He's even abandoned it? All right.
There's been so many parties where people have bumped the CDJs or bumped the boot and nothing has happened. I'm like, if for no other reason, it's worth playing CDs right now.
The CDJs now have a pitch control. So I can take something, speed it up a lot, slow it down a lot, but the voice and the melodies don't change very much. The pitch stays the same. So if I'm playing a Stevie Wonder record, for example, and I make it really fast, it might sound awkward if you're a Stevie Wonder fan, but it'll still sound like Stevie. It won't sound like Chipmunks. On a turntable, you don't have that same thing. So if you pitch up too high or too low, you're either gonna get Barry White or Chipmunks.
The consistency of the sound. In the physics of vinyl, it sounds different in the beginning than it does in the end. And it doesn't happen on a CD.
With CDs and computers, everything sounds the same. It's all compressed the same, sounds the same. There's no movement in the music.
I'm always gonna love the analog sound. Vinyl is my favorite. I do a vinyl party once in a while here, and we just did one, and the sound was so different. It was just warm, it was thick.
I love my vinyl, but to me, keeping music alive means going digital.
Well, if you can't beat them, join them. I still prefer vinyl in a way, but if you want to play all the upfront material, what are you gonna do? Labels don't even send you CDs anymore, they send you a link. can't transfer those links to vinyl.
Days of the download are prevalent and are taking over. Unfortunately, the vinyl days are obviously numbered.
Dude, the minute I saw Beatport and Traxsource pop up, I was like, it's done. It's over. Stop pressing records.
It's different now.
It's a sad day because it's done, and I mean, I think there'll always be record stores and there'll be these small boutique-y things, but yeah, it's pretty much over. I really embrace technology because if you don't, you're just gonna get left behind.
You have to kind of go with a future.
And I know the CD is probably like 27 years old now. I mean, even that's an old format that shouldn't even be around anymore.
I'm an advocate for the MP3 because I'm an artist. I like to see the money go more directly to the people that are actually creating the music because there's so many levels of people in between it.
To make house music in this world we're in now, you have to produce. You have to make a track that DJs play.
It's the evolution of the DJ. It's DJ to producer now.
You know, house music was a music that was created by DJs. Disco music was created by arrangers and real musicians, and you know, and I'm not saying DJs are not real musicians, but I mean trained musicians. You know, people that wrote music and played an instrument. You know, house music was made by DJs in the bedroom, you know, with drum machines. But then they evolved.
Okay, that sounds a little bit more realistic now. So, so this is If I Wanted You, and it's although I do a ton of work with musicians, it's actually one of the songs where I pretty much did most of the music except for the guitar. Michelle Shapiro sang and wrote the majority of the lyrics, and we sort of co-wrote a bunch of sections on it. This song really came out of me just kind of working on some stuff at my house. So if I take away the guitar and all the vocal ad-libs, this is basically what we had. That's the keyboard part and the bass. And you know, the initial idea was like this would be an example of something that I would bring in, for instance, on some of the other songs, where I bring in a rough idea that's kind of like this. Like it's kind of simple. You know, listening to just this keyboard and bass, you can tell it's not a very complicated keyboard part, but it's interesting, you know. And then in this particular case, you know, we've got the nice counter melody that's coming from the guitar with those guitar strums that works with the music, and with the little melody part from the guitar in the middle. So when that simple keyboard layer starts to, you know, become a part of the whole with the couple tracks of different guitar parts, the strumming, the picking, the melody stuff, it doesn't sound as simple and kind of bonehead keyboard playing. It just kind of all fits, which is also something that in terms of a production style, sometimes it needs things that are more subtle and more laid back, whether it's in the keyboard or guitar or even the vocal. And if you have everything that's contributing, you know, harmony in multi ways, then it can start to sound cluttered. And so from a production style, it's nice to have things that can support one another rather than compete with one another. So that's the song.
When you write a song, you can't just write about nothing. There has to be some type of emotion. You're sharing emotion with people.
I'm David Alvarado from Santa Ana. I grew up in the ghetto. I saw most of my friends die. I saw most of my family members die. I was exposed to things and situations that you will never understand and you will never be exposed to. And you're hearing everything that I've ever gone through, musically.
For the song I wrote with my son, When I'm With You,
That's an emotional experience. I'm no longer with my son's mother, but when I gotta let go, it's hard. So the emotion that I have there in that song, if you listen to that song, it builds and builds and builds and builds. But towards the end, that's the point where it's like, okay, you gotta go with your mom. I'll see you soon. I'm on Oprah.
So I'm still kind of setting up my studio. It's functional, but it's kind of a mess. I got the bones, you know, I got the walls. They're double walls with space about that much. I've got a couch, I've got those bass traps. I've got all these panels, but I haven't figured out exactly where to put them. Welcome to my studio.
Production-wise, the stuff I work with is still a lot of the basic stuff I learned to work with 10 years ago. I'm still not quite computer-oriented production. I call it the old Midwest way.
I can't wait. Yeah, it's a funny story. I was on the highway, on the freeway, on the way to the airport with my ex-girlfriend. She had a red-eye flight to New York or something. And I was supposed to give her a ride to the airport, but we overslept the alarm. So we woke up in a panic, like 45 minutes before the flight left or something. And so we were driving like a bat out of hell, and just about, I don't know, 300 or 400 yards in front of us, I see this huge pileup, like happening literally in front of me. And this car catches on fire, and I'm just kind of slowing down, and all the lanes are blocked, like the whole freeway. She's still yelling at me. She's like, I couldn't believe it, actually. We should stop and help these people. And she was like, I'm gonna get fired if I'm not on that plane. So took an evasive maneuver. I pulled to the shoulder, I hit reverse and went back to the off-ramp.
Don't be late. Don't make this loud way. Hurry, hurry, don't be late. Don't make this loud way. Hurry, hurry, don't be late.
Driving home, I was just so shaken up. Somehow that song just kind of popped in my head, like that concept. I just remember the one hook that I had in my head. It was like the hooray, I can't wait. That one. A couple weeks later, I got together with Omega for a writing session. We developed the other part from that. Anyway, that's how that track was written.
It's funny, I'm not musically trained. Like, I don't understand theory. I just play what sounds right.
People are like, what instrument do you play? I'm like, Pro Tools, you know.
You can do poetry, you can sing, you know, you could tap dance on a record if you wanted to. Anything that's gonna be creative and that can get your point across, I feel like house music is that doorway to doing what you feel.
I mean, it could be almost anything, but it has to have something that, like, hooks you.
And it's you, and it's me, love.
Suits me. That was like one of my first songs that kind of broke me out of like total obscurity, I guess.
It's you, and it's me, love.
Had the vocal hook in my head and brought Jocelyn in. Jocelyn's the singer on it, and I mean, she's awesome. It was already written. There was a scratch vocal laid so she could kind of hear the idea of what I was thinking. And I mean, honestly, she sang it in like 10 minutes. I mean, that's no joke. I mean, she took it in like 2 takes and was like, all right, cool, it sounds good. Played it for I said, hey, because I'd already turned in the album It's You, It's Me. So anyhow, I was kind of a little timid. I went in there, I'm like, hey, you know, I know the album's done, but here's this other song I finished. This could make a cool bonus track to the album, I don't know. It's kind of like on that same soulful, clubby tip. I don't know if you'll be into it. I was very shy playing it, and we played it, and he turned it up, and he's like, that's a hit. He's all like, okay, cool, we're putting it on the album. And then we mailed it out to a couple people, And the reaction was just like, I remember Ben Watt and Jay Hannon were calling me up like, oh my gosh, dude, what, who are you? What's going on?
Then it's you, then it's me you love.
For me, it's the most fun thing if you do something and you do something really spontaneous and it turns out to be really cool.
I made the track House Music. Here goes the big history. I was working at Melrose Avenue, a place called Street Sounds. This homeless guy came in. His name was Robert. And he would only listen to records. He had no money. But I heard his voice as an artist, and I said, wow, he's got a good voice. He's got a good voice. And I said, hi, what's your name? He said, oh, my name is Robert. I said, hi, Eddie Amador, how are you? Shook his hand. So the next day I went to work, but I wrote something during my lunch break. He showed up, and I said, Robert, can you read? Yeah, I can read. Okay, listen, go in the bathroom. Here's your list. Here's my Walkman. Take this cassette recorder, sit on the toilet, and read. So he pressed record and said,
not everyone understands house music. It's a spiritual thing, a body thing,
a soul thing. But in his beautiful voice, you know, I'm a producer, not a vocalist. And there it was.
I love being able to go in the studio, work for a couple weeks or days or whatever, and make this sort of abstract thing. I can go to the club and play it and listen to it and get a reaction from the people. There's very few things in life that are that immediate and that gratifying.
I was at, again, Marcus White's other club, and I had my white label, my record bag, and I said, Frankie, please play this. And it was all loud, it was dancing, it was cool. I didn't know, I didn't know Frankie had a Grammy. I didn't know Frankie was all, I knew Frankie was all that. I was dumb to ask him, So he played it. People went crazy. He turned around and said, congratulations. And he shook my hand. And that was a big thing for me,
I went to the High School of Art and Design in New York. That's when I was really going to pursue a career as a costume designer. But I got offered a job as a DJ. I don't think I thought that it would be some easy money to make. I just thought that it'd be an easy job to do. It worked fine for like about 6 months for budgetary reasons that they couldn't afford to keep me on, so I ended up getting fired. But right after that, Larry brought me to work, Larry Levan that is, brought me to work with him, and he and I had pretty much grown up together. So I got the first job as a DJ, but he got the first secure job. Because you have to remember, during that whole period, this was not a profession. I remember going to see my father once, and I told him that I was working as a club DJ, and so he didn't know what that was. So he was like, they're paying you to play records every night. And I was like, yeah. And he was like, well, how much are they paying you? And he sat there and he did the math. He was like, you're making more money than me. And that's when I got offered the job in Chicago. And they didn't want me first. They wanted Larry first. Larry had no intentions of moving out of New York City. He was building Paradise Garage. Why would he give that up to move to Chicago? But for me, the field was wide open. I didn't have any other obligations. It was an opportunity for me to go somewhere and actually build something on my own. It actually turned out pretty well.
That was really it for me. Like when I heard Frankie, I'd never heard anyone play music whose selection in music was so rich, had a lot of textures and substance to it. I mean, it really took root, and I was just like, I want to hear as much of this as possible before I die. Because it was already happening in New York. That might be my purpose, my role in this. And I knew that I had more of an opportunity to really inject the club scene with the music. And I was just like, okay, I want to start this party, but I don't really know a lot of people, in the club scene. I had a friend who was in this popular LA-based band, and I said, do you think I can get you guys to play my opening night of the club? So my whole thing was like, that'll get some people there, and then I'll slide my thing in on them. Sure enough, they did their thing. They pulled their crowd. Good turnout the first night. So I sort of played a little bit of what they know and some of my New York stuff. You gotta understand, at that time, it was like Marcus and his New York music. The next week, it was just me, and there was like probably about 200 people, and I start playing my house music. It went down to, I'd say, about 50 people, max. I said, okay, well, I'm gonna give it one more night after this. these two British girls came in the booth, and I would see them there at the club. They were like the ones that were they were my constant. You know, we came from London, and you're playing stuff that's new in London, and we don't understand why this place isn't packed. So the next day, I'm driving down Melrose, and I see them out with like 2 of their friends passing out flyers. So the next week, numbers went to 200, 300, 400, went up to like 800 people over a few months. From there, you know, I just felt like that was what really got me out there, got me going, you know, as far as DJing and playing what I love.
I've only won 2 trophies in my life. I was on the Little League team, and we took first place, and I won the Music Magazine Best New DJ, voted by Music Magazine, Derek Carter. And I dropped it, and it broke. I started so young, so I didn't have like an epiphany or a realization or anything revolutionary. I've lived my life as this sort of gypsy, kind of lone wolf weirdo, for lack of a better word, that is seeking something that he doesn't have. Sliders and since I was a National Merit Scholar, I was placed on academic probation, so I got kicked out of school. Tape machine, it does work and record, although I don't do much work or recording with it. Around the same time, I got a job at a record store downtown, which was the record store called Import Etc. Yeah, and then I got fired because I had a bad attitude. And then they hired me back, and they fired me again. The turntable, which I originally put in here so I could sample, but I find it much easier to do all my sampling and stuff and recording in the record room, the incredibly junky record room. I didn't have a job, I couldn't pay rent. I'm like struggling, like what the hell am I gonna do? I've got these little routes that I can travel to get to things, and you know, it's all, I work it out. That was cool. Worked casual for a while, and I got fired, which tends to be a sort of recurring theme for me. But it wasn't really like a acrimonious, like animosity kind of firing, like you fucking asshole, any of that, like telling off or anything. It was a really benevolent, kind, like, honestly, Derek, this is for your own good kind of firing. Like, what is happening for you in your life is something that, if you focus on it and put some effort, can manifest into something. And at the time, I was still like a little grumbly about it. Looking back, it was exactly what it was supposed to be for me. At the time, a lot of these things didn't seem as important as I'm sure they were or are. That's my fucking Daft Punk table. Daft Punk designed a table with all these LED lights and all these like crazy patterns it would do. And I ordered it and had it shipped over from England. And that's how it arrived. Like, here's your table. I'm like, you are fucking kidding me. You know, one day I look up and I was voted one of the top 50 DJs in the world at some point. I mean, I'm 38. I figure if life begins at 40, then I'm good. I've got a head start. I've been around the world 50 times. I've been to places, I've seen things, I've done things. I'm good.
Well, when I was 13, I had a childhood friend who had an older brother, and he had DJ equipment. And actually, his set of records were a lot of break beats, which was what a lot of the hip-hop DJs played on. You know, the kind of music they played. You know, they would take a break beat from a rock record, a jazz record, a soul record, a Latin record, a disco record, and, you know, a 2-bar drum break, and just keep scratching it and making it last longer. So, you know, I tried to imitate the same when I saw them doing it. I was like, hey, let me try what I saw in the Bronx River Projects, you know? So I was trying it on my friend's equipment, and ever since then, I just, fell in love with DJing. I met another friend who was a mobile DJ, and he had a big disco collection. I became his apprentice and helped him do all his weddings and Sweet 16s and things like that. And then I said, why don't you can I borrow 2 of the crates? Can I borrow your turntables? I didn't have anything. I was just like, can I borrow your mixer? And I took him to my home, and with his collection, but of my choice, I started practicing with that music. And they were a lot of the great disco records that I even play to this day. At the same time, I met a young guy who worked in a record store called the Record Center. His name was Kenny Dope Gonzalez.
I started putting out stuff, and then Louis wanted to remix one of my songs at that time called A Touch of Salsa, and that's how we met.
They would say, Louis, we want you to do a Debbie Gibson mix. So I would go to Kenny and say, Kenny, they want me to do a Debbie Gibson mix. Let's make it our mix. We need to call ourselves something. He goes, well, I got this crew name that I use for a couple of years. It's called Masters at Work that I did with my friends.
Masters at Work was my old crew name in Brooklyn. That was the parties that we used to do, a group of us in Sunset. So that's where the name comes from.
As we started doing a few remixes, we said, we need people to notice us, because doing a Debbie Gibson record, we're not able to really let ourselves out musically all the way. So then I said, well, let's take the B side of the record and let's call it a Masters at Work dub, just to get our sound out. So we did that with a few songs, and next thing you know, everybody from Madonna to, we were doing Michael Jackson, everybody, they wanted a Masters at Work dub. Everybody wanted a Masters at Work dub.
It's a beautiful thing, you know what I mean? We haven't worked in a while. It's been 10 years since we started doing stuff again and touring again, and the chemistry's still there. As a body of work, I would say in those 10 years, there's a lot of great records there.
My dad was a DJ. He had these turntables. If you had to change the speed, you still had to take the platter off and then flip the belt up. And I'm right in the middle of mixing stuff, and normally when he comes home, I can always hear him. I'm standing on a chair with the platter in my hand, and he's like, what the hell are you doing? Get down from there. He said, what do you think you're doing? I said, well, I'm mixing. And he says, no, you're not mixing. I'll tell you what, if you can actually mix 2 records, I'll take you with me to the club and you can, warm up for me. And he says, but if you can't, I'm going to crucify you. And I pretty much didn't have a choice after that. So I started playing a few records, and I really started locking the grooves in and stuff. And he just fell to the floor, and his mouth was wide open. He's like, I can't believe this. And then immediately that weekend, he held true to his promise. He stood me on a crate, and they'd hand me records, and I'd mix them. And I really got into it. And then a little more time passed, and I got signed to Warner. I showed my grandfather the contract, and he was looking at it. He says, is that figure right? That looks like 150 grand here. What's going on here? I was like, it's an album deal. I'm trying to explain it to him, this is what, and he's just looking at me like.
Everybody wants to be a DJ. Everybody thinks, I'm gonna bite hit records and I'm gonna become a DJ and become a superstar. And they don't really understand the love that you gotta have for what you're trying to do.
You gotta really ask yourself, why am I doing this? With anything, if you're gonna invest that much time and effort into something in your life, at least understand why you're doing it.
I never really pursued the DJ career as being something that I really wanted to make it full time. I was always a music fan, first and foremost.
As long as I can remember, I've always had a huge interest in music. I remember asking my parents, hey, can you help me buy some turntables? And they're like, how much they cost? I'm like, well, they're like $500 a piece. Mixer's like another $500. No way, no. We're teachers. We can't buy you $1,500 turntable.
When I was an infant, my dad used to leave the stereo on. Thought I should always be surrounded by music. I think it had an impact on me because ever since I was little, I wanted to sing and have music be in my life full time.
When I was a kid, got my first 2 records really early, and also was listening to a lot of radio, recording things like me banging on drums, all kinds of stuff that I didn't think about until recently, and I think, oh yeah, it's true, I used to do that. We all got to start somewhere.
You see me playing on my dad's drums when I'm very little,
I have a little bit of a sense of rhythm for a 3-year-old, and then our neighbor's friend of the family was the same age, and she was on there, and another kid was on there, and none of them, knew anything.
My parents got me into playing trumpet in grammar school. And then, more in the 80s in high school was when I started and got into club music and electronic stuff.
I never really had the desire to DJ, but always made mixtapes. That's how I got dates, because I was really shy, so I used to make mixtapes for girls.
In high school, though, they used to do high school dances, and that was my first time I seen house.
I was out of high school and, we started going to all these parties. I guess I was looking for some sort of meaning in my life at the time. I just got really into the music and the scene, and I was blown away by it. I loved it. I fell in love, and I've been in love ever since.
We had done a show in Chicago for high school. And while I was there, I had a couple nights off. And I went to a club, and then all of a sudden this song came on that started to slow down, and slow down, and slow down, and this girl's voice, and slow down. And it just was like this crazy mental, mind fuck. What is happening here?
Everything else I was listening to was maybe slightly more musical. I kept hearing it. It was very simple, and it kept intriguing me.
Once I saw DJ leaving the club with this kind of big trolley of 5 crates of records, I asked him, can I come in the booth and hang out? And he'd be like, all right, you play. And he'd just leave the booth and leave, he'd be like, play. And I'd be like, ah.
A friend of mine had to take a bathroom break. He asked me if I could just put the newest record in because no one was really mixing back then. I was like, sure, no problem. I didn't realize he had the volume up and everything, and I was just cueing the record in my headphones, and the owner thought I could scratch. We got hired to do a funk disco hip hop night. I didn't have 8 records, in my collection.
Back in the day, I used to swipe records from the radio station I worked at college. Don't tell anyone I used to swipe records from my old radio station. I redeemed myself, though. I donated all my old equipment, like this 32-channel Soundcraft mixing board and then all this outboard gear that I wasn't using anymore. Donated it to my university.
There's a whole culture around the record shop that's definitely missing. People just hanging around talking about, man, this record and that record. Did you play this last week? Oh my gosh, did you see the reaction? Oh, I should get a copy of that. I mean, that's what Gramophone is like.
I have written a song specifically for those that like to get down.
The best advice that I ever gotten was from Derek Carter. He used to work at a record store in Chicago called Gramophone, and a lot of DJs had gotten their start there. I'm talking about Derek Carter, Mark Farina, DJ Sneak, myself, Heather. All these DJs came from that record store.
Kind of where all the DJs worked at. Everybody at one point or another, we all worked at Gramophone.
We're all a big family, and we all grew up together.
I remember being an employee there, how people would used to watch certain DJs when they'd come in and see what they were shopping for. So they'd be like, yeah, I'm shopping, but they'd want to see on the wall what someone was picking up.
I helped turn Gramophone into the dance music powerhouse it is. At the time, they had 2 rows of dance music. I got there and I kind of convinced them to let me have my own section of wall that grew from 9 spaces to 20 spaces.
For me, when I got a job at Gramophone, I was really excited, and it was almost more exciting than being accepted into college, which is really bad to say that.
Yeah, Gramophone was like high school. The 1990s DJs in house music at one point either worked there or acted like they worked there. Because even if you didn't work there, you were there so much that you looked like you worked in a store.
I used to hang out there just until I got a job, and then I gained so much knowledge just because of the fact you're gonna get all the top music, but at the same time, you're getting a lot of education.
It's cool to think about, in retrospect, what a cornerstone it is in terms of house history.
It's such a blessing, everyone just kind of came together just by living in this city and loving house music.
By having these young DJs work there and push the sound and push themselves too as they're pushing the story, the sound, and their career, you could move forward by being at the right place at the right time.
If If someone were to tell me, say, you know what, you're gonna be a DJ, blah, 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 producer, I'd have been like, no, man, I wanna play baseball. I was actually being scouted by 2 major league teams, the Baltimore Orioles and the Philadelphia Phillies. But unfortunately, I had a knee injury. I tore my ACL, so I gave it up. But then freshman year of college, a buddy of mine, he was like, you know, I got some turntables, and he had like 6, 7 records, and I would go in his room and play. He didn't mind, you know, I'd just spin. It just was fun. You know, I take those same 7, 8 records, do different mixes with them and rearrange the order, and it got to the point where I got bored. I'm gonna buy some records. So I bought a couple, you know, to add to the mix, and then I bought more and more, and I did this loft party. It was like a club. It was just all about having a good time. This guy loved the way I spun. He booked me, and then I spun there. The other person booked me, and it just became this domino effect. And then from there, they brought me in the studio. I had no clue what was going on.
I just wanted the opportunity to play on a sound system with people dancing. I didn't care if there was 10 people or 100 or, God, 100 people dancing to my music. Like, wow, you know, that was payment in itself right there.
I was spinning for breakdancers. I wasn't even really making music per se at the time, but I was playing around with it.
We were using the Uri mixer at that time. I was just crashing all over the place. They have the big knob mixers. It is the most difficult mixer to learn on. A lot of people still to this day don't want to use that mixer. But once you learn on that, you can play on anything.
And the first time I played was at a friend's birthday party, and we were really nervous. And all the guys look at you like, what do those 2 kids, what are they planning to do here? They want to show us something. And we were quite radical. We played really hard stuff, really Detroit, Chicago stuff. But people loved it.
I think if I stayed in Chicago, I could have been happy just going out. But since I went to Salt Lake, I was like, wow, if I'm going to be involved in some kind of scene, I'm going to have to kind of make it myself. It just kind of took off. I mean, it just worked. There was a void, and there was a lot of people going to college from LA or San Francisco, Chicago, wherever, Minneapolis, St. Louis. There's all these people, you know, 30,000 kids in university. You're going to have people from everywhere.
You have to really seek house music out. It's not something you can just like turn the radio on and find like quality, like good house music. You have to be pretty invested in it.
I would describe house music aficionados. They're some of the hardest people to play music for. And I say that in a good way because they keep you on your toes. You know, you can't front. You just have to be on it or they'll let you know. They'll leave the dance floor.
Records you pull, like you pull it up in the crate and you can tell the crowd reaction, like right when you look at it. Pull those out in your crate, you know, like as soon as they hear the beat, you throw in like the riff, you just throw in the riff of a song, like
there's like a practical responsibility, like you gotta make sure people are dancing and people are happy.
You know, there are so many people that don't know about dance music. I can't tell you how many people I meet on the plane, they're like, so they fly you to play in a club? I don't get it. You know, they just look at me like I'm just a crazy person and I'm making something up. They're like, really? And you're just playing music? So what do you do?
The DJing is the fun part. The traveling and all the crap and being away from the people you love and all that, that's the work.
Yeah, you get all kinds of crazy, weird, bizarre experiences. It's just a total disaster. And you're like, why the hell did I come fly halfway around the world? Why did you bring me here? What's the point? You know, and there's like 10 people in the room and the sound sucks and you just want to go home. I did a gig in Kiev a couple years back for a mafia boss or something. We had to stop for the night in this little town in the middle of nowhere. I didn't get any sleep. The lights went out, the electricity went out, there was no heat. It was like 35 degrees, like 2 hours. And, you know, the promoter came and told me, like, you know, he would like you to play 30 more minutes, and that's it. And got my money and left. I was like, why did you bring me to Kiev to play for like 10 people in the restaurant? It was bizarre, you know. I was actually welling up with tears at the end because I was like, God, this was such a fucked up, crazy experience. You know, it was just emotional, and I don't know. It was good though at the end.
Just being a DJ and traveling, you just end up with the most craziest stories of like, all of a sudden some DJ comes up and says he's next. I get off the tables. This guy's not even a DJ hire for that night. I go and I talk to the promoter. I was like, what's going on? Is he up? It's like, who is that? Some guy came into a party out in France and just got on the turntables and started playing. Security came in, yanked him off the turntables and made me get on. And that was like the most wildest thing besides the crazy sexual stories that I'm not gonna get into.
As soon as you're in the booth and you start playing, then everything's okay again, you know, because it's fun.
Okay, hey, how about this? You pick your favorite music, and then we'll give you a plane ticket, we'll put you up in a hotel, and then you play your favorite music for all these people. And then when you're done, we'll actually pay you for it, buy you some drinks for you and all your friends if you want, and then you go home. I mean, if you really break it down, that's what we do.
Bought a cassette and brought it back to her friend who's a promoter in Paris. And then a few weeks later, I got a call in the morning. Hey, my name is Virginia. You want to come to Paris? We throw parties. And I was like, Paris? I can't believe it. From a mixtape. That, for me, was a really big turning point because it really signified how small the culture is. There's so many people who kind of know each other, but it brings us all together.
I think kind of focusing on the positive of it and not the negative makes it easier to stay motivated. Sometimes you can look at situations a certain way and think that they are certain, but they're not.
I was in Russia. Mafia came. When I was done DJing, he said, play one more. 2 more, 3 more. I played another half hour. But I tell you, that's kind of a cool thing, you know? I mean, if you go to Europe, even Russia, they still want to hear it.
It blows me away how music is received overseas as opposed to it is here in North America. You know, they'll play Mariah Carey and then they'll drop a house track. It's like pop music over there. It's amazing.
I think America has kind of digressed a little house-wise. It doesn't seem to be as booming as it was.
It's one of those things. It's like soccer, you know? It's like the rest of the world is getting it and is dancing. But for some reason, there's a disconnect in America. It's an American music, but ironically, other countries understand it and take care of it and nurture it even better.
We started doing a lot more gigs, like Mark and I. We met this Italian couple. We're like, oh, I love what you play. We want you to come and play at our club in Italy. And we were like, yeah, right. And they're like, no, we really want you to come to play. And we didn't have passports or anything, like whatever. Kids from suburbs just fucking around playing records. Then we went to the passport office and told the passport people that we were stepbrothers and that our other stepbrother, Marco, had been in a scooter accident in Italy, so we had to go and get these emergency passports so we can get to Italy. And then we went to Italy, and it was cool.
When I'm With You, I wrote for my son. It was number 2, Billboard magazine in Italy, and it sold more than Celine Dion and Madonna. Just the response was just phenomenal. We were out shopping in Foot Locker, and all of a sudden I heard my track, so I brought out my camera, and I'm filming the speaker. How foolish is that? One of the employees was like, look, you cannot film the speaker because, you know, we have policy. And I was like, I'm sorry, but this is my song. He goes, this is your song. I go, yes. I go, I am Lego, I wrote this song. And then I had a crowd of people asking me questions, asking for autographs. And there's elderly women asking for my autograph. Why was my life designed like this? What was the point, my plan? What's going on here, you know?
It's an alias. It's a name that you use for different projects.
Sneak was my tagging name. Originally, it came from the TV Guide and Sneak Preview. The word sneak just stood out. When I got into the DJing bit, it was like, you know, I could be sneaky by playing certain songs or certain music at a time where you don't expect it.
I guess my most popular pseudonym has been Scuba. you would swim in the music. And with the Scuba moniker, I did maybe over 100 remixes under this moniker. Kind of became my signature as far as DJing as well. With all these remixes, Ohm Records, they actually signed Scuba to do an album. To listen to it really defines the sound of that time. And it's just really deep, sexy house. There's no other way to describe it.
I have to give my real name. My mom calls me Doc. You don't understand. It's like there's no. It takes the whole mystery away.
The phone kept ringing. They'd call like, we want to book this dude, Cascade. And honestly, I thought I was put like a few records out under that moniker, just kind of like whatever. I don't know. There's really even no reason. We were sitting around a lunch table at home, kind of joking, like, dude, what should I call myself? And like, I saw this thing, this waterfall, and I thought Cascade was cool. And they're like, oh yeah, that's cool, dude. You should do Cascade. Like, hey, could I have some pesto salami sandwich or whatever? It was totally like that kind of moment. And then they're like, wasn't that a dish cleaner or something like that? And I'm like, oh yeah, let's do it with Case. Do it with Case, man. Just, all right, do the artwork, all right, send it out.
Diz, there are a few urban myths to how that name came about. My mom is an avid jazz enthusiast. And when she would play anything by Dizzy Gillespie, I'd lose my mind.
DJ MC HR, the female preacher. Then it was Heather, DJ Heather, that black girl. Because people would say, you know Heather, that black girl that plays. And then it just wound up being just DJ Heather. So I don't think a lot of people know that. I forgot about that part too.
I met Derek Carter, and he was working at a record store that happened to be right around the block from my college. I was at Columbia College, Chicago, and he was working at a place called
Imports, Etc. And it was awesome. It really was. I mean, this store was a piece of shit store.
Derek just was one of the workers there, and he ran a wall, and he had different employees. You get a wall.
And he came in, and I was like, you need some help? Nah. So I was like, you sure? I can help you. We got good stuff. It's like, nah. So he bought these records. I rung him up. He came back in and bought the exact same records again. And I was like, oh, the ones you bought yesterday weren't good enough?
I'd bought some stuff, and I went home and left them on the train, and I was upset because they were good deep house stuff, and so I had to go back and buy them again. And he was like, you just bought these yesterday.
Ha 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 ha. Dumbass.
I just became a vinyl junkie. And so I was getting stuff from New York, but I was also finding out about stuff in Chicago. So I started mail ordering from the store called Imports, Etc. And there was a certain individual named Derek Carter who used to help me with my orders.
But Marcus, called faithfully, religiously, all the time. And I was like, wow, this guy must be rich. Century City, I see that on the end of Price is Right. I kind of figured out the kind of stuff that he liked. And so I was able to steer him in direction of music and things.
He was always really cool. So I just felt like he was a good friend that I never saw. I talked to him every week on the phone, and he would really take a lot of time and hook me up.
He was running this kind of acid jazz thing for a while. And I'd be like, I wonder if that's the same Marcus Wyatt that, maybe not. But it turned out to be the same one. I'm like, oh, how you doing? So yeah, I've known Marcus. I speak to him all the time since 20 years ago. 20 years ago, wow.
I played a party called Truth. Met a guy named Marcus Wyatt there.
Doc and I always heard of each other. These promoters hired us to play, and it was just one of those things that everybody wanted to see. We were setting up the Brand New Heavies tour, so in each city we wanted to do an after party. So we heard that Britt was the guy in Philly.
King Britt used to have this really cool spot called Silk City.
I used to bring in everyone from Doc Martin, Marcus Wyatt, from all over.
On the outside, you wouldn't think much because it was kind of like a cheesesteak diner, and you'd walk through these doors and it was this underground club. It was a place you could just let it all hang out, play whatever you want. The vibe there was always thick. I mean, really good. I'd go to Philly just to do that.
I played that party, and that's where I met Britt, and from there we've just been, really great friends. Yeah, King is definitely a very special individual.
It's always a pleasure to meet new artists as well as play with my friends and people that I've known for years. You know, I get to play with Marcus, who I've been friends with and known forever, and Mark, who I've known for a long time. And it's always fun when you're able to play with people that you enjoy sharing the experience with. So I always look forward to that.
Miguel is truly my brother. He's as genuine as they come.
Done a lot of work with Julius Pat. I was the engineer for all of Miguel Miggs' stuff. You know, Miguel and I worked together for 5 years. I also worked with David Harness, Marcus Wyatt.
JJ and I go back way before that early San Francisco scene. And so he was always like, whenever, if you ever want to do something, you know, just let me know.
I've known Julius Pap since '92. He was a big DJ in the Bay Area way back when. We were sort of talking about, hey, you know, maybe we should do a party, you know? He's been doing this gig with Miguel we called Salted, and he wanted to do something a little different. I came up with the idea of doing like a classic house night. He was like, yeah, we can call it Jack Your Body. And it's been amazing.
Growing up in Chicago, I think all of us really just looked up to Derek Carter and Mark Farina.
I knew Colette from when she was like young, like maybe 17, young. And I remember when she was like, I think I'm gonna be a DJ. I was like, damn. It wasn't really a career choice, or at least an advisable one. And she's killed it. She pulled it off. You know, so I'm like, that's like a little, Colette, I knew her when.
Heather and I have been playing records together for 10 years, and we just love each other to death, and we're like, let's do a project.
We did a House of Own, one of those series, put together our different sounds, different takes on the same theme.
We don't play the same, but I thought it would be fun. We'd get 2 CDs, they're a little different flavor, but still both really good house tunes. I just think she's an amazing DJ.
Our friendship, it kind of defies all the DJ stuff. That's cool, and we talk about it, but you know, we've become really good friends over the years, and that's really been an important relationship.
Cascade, I met him before when he was working at home. I hardly see him or talk to him anymore because he's just so busy now, and he does a lot of the bigger parties.
You never know who's waiting for you. You never know when love is coming your way. But if tonight I look again into your eyes, and it's you, and it's me.
When I first moved to San Francisco, I lived across the street from Molten Studios. I'd be like, hey, dudes, what's up? Chris Lam, what's happening? Ran out and gave him my first record, like, hey, check out this demo, you know, whatever. This is stuff I'm working on. My studio's right here, you guys are right there. And everybody was working and walking and out of there. JJ, Miguel, Julius Pap, the core of the San Francisco kind of thing. I think I just met them kind of like hustling, like, yo, play my music.
I think it'll still exist as a pure form. I don't expect anyone to come along and revolutionize the sound, really. Maybe. That'd be cool.
It needs to keep evolving musically. Anyone with GarageBand can do a house track. You can do one tonight, and it could be really big tomorrow.
There's no science behind it now. It's just kind of all automatic, and this is what needs to be done. And if I want to make it, I've got to play this way. And it's not really about that. If you want to make it, you got to be yourself when you're playing and play your own style and let your personality come through.
Old school Chicago kids, they're gonna say it wasn't as good as back in the day when Frankie did it this way or Ron Hardy did it that way.
Everybody, all the older people saying, you know, you missed the good old days. Like, it's never gonna be like it was.
You need to bring that history, that what you've learned your whole life through listening to records, that's what's gonna take house music to the next level.
House has always the potential to reinvent itself because there's always some certain dynamic in there of putting new influences in there to refresh everything.
The nature of the music is to constantly turn over ideas. It's often about what's next, who can come up with the next sound or the most interesting thing. That's probably to a fault because we can never ultimately define ourselves.
I'm not even necessarily sure what it is, but for some reason, it's something that has grabbed a hold of me more than I've grabbed a hold of it.
It's probably one of the only things I've ever found in my life that I can never quite figure the whole thing out. There's always some new angle to learn about and always some new development, and it's challenging, you know? You have to stay on top of your game.
I make music every single day and hour that I have in my house. I'm still working. And I'm not tired, and I'm not bored. I still have so much more to offer. I still haven't hit my peak. That's the way I feel.
There's always something new happening, so it's always evolving, always changing, and always progressing.
You have people who can exist 50, 60 years doing something just out of love and making a wonderful life out of it.
We're gonna keep on doing it until we can't do it anymore.
She's a winner. It's done well by me. I try to do well by it, so it's give and take. Never had the heart to throw it away. It's just my Daft Punk table that's in a fucking million pieces that sits wrapped on the side in the garage that pains me. It's not too demanding of a mistress. Like any mistress, you know, if you snore while I'm sleeping, I'm gonna poke you. Shut up.
My business is other people's entertainment. Their job for the night is to go out and have fun and forget about the rest of their work week. And we get paid to provide that for them. Even at my worst gig and that worst flight, I think to myself, there's worse ways to make a living.
I love what I do, and I show people how much I love it. And I'm telling you, man, I feel like I am one of the most purest house DJs out there who learned the craft, who respects it, who lives it every day, and who wants to share it with the world.
It's like I still have that fresh feeling that permeates through me like all the time, that still has me thinking that I made the right decision to turn my hobby into a career. And I'm lucky that way, I guess. You know, how many people can say that?
I think it's probably the best job. I don't think about it. It's just, that's what I do. You know, what else would I do?
I've actually been able to make a decent living off of it, and I'm extremely fortunate and lucky to be able to do that. I count my blessings, and I'm really happy to be where I'm at.
It's interesting to see the change that's going on.
It's advanced so much, going from a sample over a drum beat to having bands perform house music live. It's really been wonderful to watch over the past 27 years, watch it change so much.
It's a new thing, you know, and it's within our generation. Like, we helped start it, we're doing it. I think it's more defined by the people that are involved in it.
It exists because it's what we're compelled to do.
Whenever anything makes you feel that good, at least for me, I want to share it with others. It's not really about us. It's really about the spirit that we're projecting through our music for others to enjoy.
When I go through the history of my music, it's the history of my life. Like, every track that I can play, I can remember that exact emotion that I felt when I was making that song. What mode of my life was in is wrapped up in that record. It's your personal soundtrack to your life, it really is.
Producing music has ruined listening to music because I no longer listen to music. It's actually not enjoyable to listen to music. I analyze music. So it's not something that I don't have music playing in the background all day while I'm working, while I'm checking emails, while I'm talking to my manager or writing blurbs for the label or doing whatever. I don't have music on while I do that. You know, we'll be driving in the car and my girlfriend and I will be talking or whatever, and she'll be like, where are you right now? It's like, oh, I'm in the bass line, I'm in the keyboard line. I'm trying to figure out how they did that.
Not everyone understands house music. It's a spiritual thing, a body thing, a soul thing.
House music, period, is about a feeling. Everyone thinks it's about the 909 kick drum, and it's really about the feeling.
It's about the feeling.
House is about love. House is about love.
It's a feeling, it's a vibe thing, it's a soul thing.
Something soulful, something deep. The love of it, the passion of it, it's about the music.
There's a female vocal I've used in some mixes and tracks named Barbara Ann Tier. Is from this African-American playwright poetry record of the early 70s.
Now that I look back in retrospect, I know that whenever I was unhappy or not feeling well or depressed, I would dance.
It's just this woman talking for 30 minutes about acting and being a playwright and speaking about dancing all my life. I've been dancing. It's always a social kind of a thing.
I usually dance around a table. Table, circle. Circle is completion. Circle is wholeness. 360 degrees.
Certain vocals like that can give a music a sound, you know, and they don't even really, it didn't really come from that. It's just kind of, you know, interpreted into that, and it kind of matches well with the house feeling.
So I loved to dance all of a sudden, you know, it became my life. When I finished, I always felt great, you know. So now I say that was a form of unconscious therapy.
There's really nothing else out there that can unite people from all continents and bring people together to dance and have a good time and sort of just release.
We don't look the same or act the same, but we all feel the same about it.
They had a need to belong to a group of people where they could fulfill their potential. If they couldn't see it, they could just feel it naturally. A need to be in an atmosphere that is free, that is open, that is striving for truth, and not somebody else dictating to you how to do your thing, which you know how to do better than anybody else.
How would you define house music?
The definition of house music, to me, house music...
Oh my goodness.
House music. House music is
House music is...
Definition of house music.
Your definition.
My definition of house music.
Not anybody else.
Yeah, my definition. Like what house music means or what my definition.